Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ag Welding School. Today I'll be teaching you how to MIG weld. MIG is probably the easiest out of arc and TIG. It's also the most useful. So we're going to look at the tools and PPE you're going to need first. So first we have our welder. It has our voltage dial, which affects how many volts are going through the metal. It also affects how high your bead is and how wide your bead is. Our wire speed dial, which affects how hot your metal gets, and your on and off switch. Next thing we have is our ground clip. This is what helps to complete the arc or the current that goes through the metal. And we have our MIG gun. This just helps you control where you're welding. Then we have our wire brush to help us clean up our welds after we do them. We don't really need the chipping hammer on there. Then we have our wire cutters, just in case, like how this is, our wire is too long. We can take these and cut it off. We then have our pliers or vice grips to pick up hot metal, because you're not going to pick that up with your hand or your gloves. Next, PPE. We have an apron. If you're wearing the apron, you have to also have sleeves on, protect your arms from the sparks. If you don't want to do that, you can wear a welding jacket that has sleeves on it. Then you have your gloves, protect your hands from sparks. The most important one probably is your eye protection. You always have to have that on. If you're not welding, you're not. Last, we have our welding helmets. Now, there's two types of welding helmets. There is passive and auto darkening. Auto darkening just means that you can see through it before you start welding, and passive means that you cannot. It is completely dark, and you can only start seeing once you weld. Alright, so now we're going to look at the settings for our welder. First thing we have is our voltage dial. I have mine to about 4 because voltage mainly just controls how high and wide your bead is. So if you need a higher or wider bead, you're going to turn this up more. I have my wire speed dial at about 65. The wire speed dial affects how hot the metal will get and how hot the weld will get. So if you need better weld penetration, you're going to turn this up, but you're also going to have to move faster across your piece of metal. Then we have our gas, shielding gas. You're going to turn this all the way to the left, counterclockwise, and then you're going to turn this one here clockwise until it hits about 20. Alright, so now that we have our welder set correctly, we're going to start welding. I like to have my left hand on the table and my right hand in my left, so I can guide myself across that piece of metal and make sure I'm staying steady. I like to start with a few dry runs just to make sure I can get all the way across that piece of metal, and if I can't, I move it over just to make sure that I'm getting all the way across that and I'm not going to be, jacked up over here and all uncomfortable. While you're doing dry runs, you don't actually have to make sure your welder's off. It's a good thing to do, but you don't have to, because with this welder, the only current going through here, the only time the current is going through here is when you press this button on the trigger. Alright, so you can stick this on here and nothing will ever, nothing will ever go. If your line is too long before you start, you should take your wire cutters and cut off some of that excess wire. It's going to make it a lot easier to start your weld. Alright, so the first weld we're going to do is a T-weld. It looks just like this. I just have it tacked on there right now. But yeah, I will do the weld and then I will show you what it looks like. Alright, so as you can see, my weld is pretty good. If you look on this side and this one, you can see I had very good weld penetration. Overall, MIG is the easiest and the most efficient way to weld. It doesn't take a lot of time to learn, so that's why I would also recommend learning to arc weld first, you can go see my other video on that. Arc welding first, because if you MIG first and then try and learn arc, it's going to be a lot harder to learn arc because it's just going to be more difficult. But other than that, tell your folks I says hi. Watch out for deer, and ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful night. I'll see you next time on Ag Welding.